Hey, Patreon contributors, welcome to the spoiler talk for In the House, in the Dark of the Woods by Laird Hunt.
I'm not sure what I expected going into this book. I'm really not. I know it's not what I got, though, which is a really windy, crazy story, but by and large, really well crafted.
Yeah.
I have a question. And again, this, if you tuned in, you're not going to read the book. A lot of this isn't gonna make sense to you because we're not going to do a ton of explaining. Do you know why the handsome child abductor story is there at all? Because it didn't make it sense to me anywhere in the book. Like, why we needed that. I mean, I know Granny someone was feeding on the kids that he attacked or whatever, but I still don't see how that really ties into Goody.
Well, there was one part toward the very end, and I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was when everything was just fucking crazy, and everybody was somebody else who was somebody else. Where someone said something about, it was Granny. Someone was saying how she was losing, she lost her, whatever food source or whatever she was saying. And then she couldn't have any more potential Elizas. Like, it seemed to me that in addition to giving Granny someone a food source of children to eat, it was also potentially creating people that could be the next Eliza. Maybe?
Yeah, I guess that makes sense, except that I have no reason to believe that any of the other Elizas came that way.
From the handsome child abductor?
Yeah.
I don't know.
The beauty of this is the whole thing with them trading roles and doing all that is that it gets to the game that they were playing. The game that Goody always wanted to play, but that Eliza was like, we don't have enough people. Maybe one day if what's her name, Captain Jane comes by, yep, we can play this game, which I thought was pretty interesting when you realize at the end that they have been playing this game and that Goody's just not aware of the rules or that she's an active participant.
Yeah, and that's like an Edgar Wright level of like just fucking telling you what's going to happen, like at the beginning of the story. You know what I'm saying? Edgar Wright, he did Baby Driver, Scott Pilgrim. Mm-hmm. There's a mechanic that he does where, like, if someone says something, that it will come true later, basically. That's something that's a bedrock kind of feature of his movies, and it's done in a way where, like, you're still surprised by it or whatever. And that happened here because she basically said there's this game where everybody becomes someone else, and everybody became so you knew it was coming. You just maybe didn't actually realize it was coming.
Nope. Had no realization. There were things I thought were going to happen. I did think at some point I thought that Goody was Eliza, but not in the way that she winds up being in the book. Mm-hmm. But like that she was visiting some future version of herself, like
a time shift thing.
And there was another time when I thought that when her and Captain Jane are in I can only imagine what this sounds like to someone who hasn't read the book, when they're in the skin boat, right? The bones and skin boat.
Yeah.
And as they're lowering themselves, I was fully expecting that to be that lady in the stockade. Oh, so that Goody would be where Goody was when she was a little girl before she was kidnapped. So I kept expecting there to be a time loop of some sort. And I think there was one other time. I remember thinking 3 times I thought that this was some kind of time travel-y, interaction, some kind of, time is not time is a flat circle or whatever so that kind of thing.
I recognized the same beats that you did, and I took them a little bit of a different way. I took them as people exposing more than they should have to Goody, if that makes sense. Like they were kind of revealing that they knew what was going to happen, and she just didn't understand it to know what they meant. So in a way, it was a time thing, but just not an actual with the timeline of things. It was just with who knows what's happening when. But yeah, that was probably the best part of the whole thing, was like there was enough groundwork to know what eventually would happen. You just didn't necessarily know exactly how or why, especially the why. There is no fucking explanation of like why any of that stuff is going on ever.
No, but it was interesting because all of them had killed somebody.
Yeah, there is a theme to the women, and why they kind of qualify for sure. Because it's all women who have basically transgressed in some way, right? Again, like against what a polite society or whatever.
They've all killed.
Society.
They've all killed a family member. I mean, if you really want to break it down, every one of them was.
Goody killed her mom. Eliza killed her sister. And
Captain Jane was also like a cousin or something.
Yeah.
And we don't get a lot of backstory on Granny someone.
Yeah.
Yeah, she doesn't get a ton of backstory.
But she's eating kids, so it's not doesn't take a lot of big logical leap.
So that's dude. Some of this stuff was just so well written, like the whole the weird shit, right? The scream in the well. It's a scream that's in like a little rock, basically. The ability to capture that guy's tear and then like pass that tear on like a month later, weeks later to somebody else is just really solid. Supernatural, but like kind of transcending supernatural into like more like fantasy.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, I could see, and I don't have a ton of exposure to Harry Potter, right? But capturing a scream in a stone, that could go
literally,
Harry Potter, right?
literally did happen in the Song of Mermen. Basically, was captured within an egg. Yeah. I want to go back to my theory about the handsome child abductor because something occurred to me as we've been talking. Her choosing to not go down the staircase and become one of like the little fat pig babies qualified her to be an Eliza. Because so like, and I think it's even brought up that like it was unique about her that she chose not to go down the stairs because she felt like she had to get back to her family. There was something about her doing that as opposed to just going down the stairs like any other kid would that made her different, that put her on the radar of the Granny Someones and Captain Janes and stuff like that.
Interesting.
But I could just be
I don't know that I'm on board with that because like I said, I don't know how that would lead to her killing her mom. Like
her mom's a big bitch, so.
Well, I tried to qualify that my own in the book where I thought like, was there something relating back to that when I found out that she killed her mom that could eventually be the cause for her killing her mom? And really it was just that her mom was a dick to her dad in general.
Yeah.
And then really the final step was her kind of taunting her grandson that caused her to be killed.
Yeah. Can we talk about like, so the whole book, like 80% of the book probably, we are led to believe that Goody is not a bad person, and is a meek, innocent, simple, and then suddenly it's revealed to us very like in quick succession, like a ton of things, like that she stabbed the shit out of her mom. And then would do these weird like paranormal activity standing above you while you're sleeping kind of shit, like and had to be restrained.
Yep.
And the restraint reveal was really good too because like she goes back to her house and she goes past the pallet with like the ropes that are chained to the wall and you're like, oh shit, like this her husband's a real piece of garbage. Yeah. But then she says why and you're like, oh
you
wait.
say piece of garbage. I read that as, man, Goody knows how to have a good time.
She's a real good time gal. And then it's revealed why and you're like, oh yeah, I would have been chaining her up too. So like there's that weird reveal at the very end and then you're like, oh well, of course she's gonna go back to the woods and become a witch.
It's funny because when we find out that she stabbed her mom, I read it and I read that line and the line's just like in the middle, completely in the middle of something else. And I read past the line. I read like one more. I was like, wait a minute. That fucking say she stabbed her mom? Like I had to go back and like reread the it's just struck it right along. And I was like, whoa, what just happened there?
And then so then there's the moment where like the knife makes her want to stab her husband, basically, like the fact that there's a knife next to the, you know what I'm saying? He didn't necessarily do anything to deserve to get murdered, and her kid definitely didn't. But she's just ready to fucking stab him, and that's why I feel like that's why she left again, right? Like,
I don't think that's why she left again. I think the fact that she was looking for an excuse to go back is why she was thinking about stabbing them. So same result, but I think different motivation.
Yeah.
I did spend a little bit of time when we realized that she's absolutely nuts, because it occurred to me earlier in the book too that maybe she's just crazy and hallucinating all this.
Right. Oh yeah, yeah. That occurred
when
to
she
me
gets
too.
back home, I started thinking, wow, this could really flip forward to this is, 2018 and there's a woman in a fucking padded room somewhere, right? Because she's clearly nuts, and maybe she envisioned all this and she is going to stab the husband and the kid. And what we're seeing is, the aftermath of how she justified that to herself by being a simple prairie woman in the 1800s or whatever the math works out to be.
Right.
No. This whole story actually manages to take place in its weird fucking thing. Now, what the fuck? What is Red Boy?
Yeah, that's what I'm not understanding about the story overall is like the significance of Red Boy, because basically, like, to put it simply, there are these woods where once you go into them, if you're a woman, apparently, you get looped into this game, and the woods are run/owned by Red Boy.
Mm-hmm.
And Red Boy kind of is torturing you. It like, you could almost take it to a hell kind of situation. Like, if you wanted to get super biblical about shit, like Red Boy could be the devil and the woods could be hell.
Yeah, I mean, the way it's explained, right, is that Red Boy is your worst nightmare. But Red Boy also can play with you in a friendly way too. Like, there's kind of this thing, and the Red Boy that we see. So Goody's Eliza is fucking a Robin grown giant size, but then has some fucking Hulk Hogan arms. Like, I don't, some fucking weird shit happening there, man.
Yeah, that was weird. And it stabs her in the hand. I don't like that. If you take away the possibility that it's like a hell scenario, it's just fucked up. I can't think of a better explanation.
Well,
but then,
and I think it is a hell scenario, right? Because you have to have murdered somebody, like unjustifiably murdered a family member to get there. But to get there, you have to willingly give yourself up. You have to willingly trade places with the current Eliza. Everything you do there has to be willing. Like, she willingly had to give up the Scream Rock. She willingly had to want to help Eliza. And then you have an opportunity. Your penance is that you're there a long time, but it's not just penance. Somebody else has to take your spot. It's kind of like being on death row and them saying, hey, we'll let you go, but somebody else has to willingly take your place. And obviously there's trickery and deceit involved in doing that, because no one's like, listen, this is going to be your personal hell forever. What is interesting is Eliza, the Eliza that we know from reading this book, tries to send Goody away.
right.
She tries to warn her off and tells her to run. And Goody chooses not to, even though there's a giant fucking red bird with human arms sitting at the fucking table eating cow guts. She's like, no, I think I want to help you. And Eliza's like, fine, fuck it. You said you wanted to help me. Here you go. This is how you help. See you later, Eliza. And she takes off.
Yeah.
And then we get her backstory. And now it seems like she was there for, 15 years, 10 years maybe? Because she had the two daughters, but the daughters were grown up, but it wasn't really clear. They weren't married. So I'm guessing that they were in their teens.
Still lived at home. Yeah.
Yeah. So I would have to imagine they were in their teens. So she was there for a long time. They had to learn the rules of the game. But this also caused there to be some great lines in this book, too. And both of them are around Hope. And I don't want to read them on the podcast because you mentioned her name was Hope. So in an effort to not spoil anything, they're talking about the girl. So Goody's talking about the girl. And Eliza says, Hope has many friends. Yeah. Which is an interesting line when you think about the fact that she actually isn't just named Hope. That is a representation of what she is in the book. That's the hope that you can get out of there. And then later, Eliza is talking to Captain Jane and says, can you imagine your early hours and weeks as Eliza without hope? Mm-hmm. which are some really, really powerful lines, once you get to the part in the story that you really understand what's going on.
And it's interesting, now that we're talking about Hope, it's interesting that as time goes on, Hope becomes less and less nice to the Eliza character. And I think that it's interesting because, like, if you look at the timeline of Eliza in the game, it has to start off with kind of like you were saying, not necessarily an altruistic, but like a sacrifice, like choosing to become Eliza, which is on its face value a good thing. Mm-hmm. But in order to not be Eliza anymore, you have to rope someone into becoming Eliza. So I think that there's a natural transition from doing a good thing to doing a bad thing to get out, where it would be natural that Hope likes you less at the end than she did at the beginning. So that was cool.
Mm-hmm. Well, I like that they said that she comes around less and less too. So even the wording is like, eventually you start to lose hope that you're ever going to get out of there as it goes on longer and longer. I mean, there's some really, really clever and good stuff in here in this book. The game is brilliant.
Yeah.
So if you come back, you could become Captain Jane. Like, I mean, it's there's some great things going on here that, like I said, I feel like that synopsis, man, like it hurts the book.
Can we talk about the final chapter?
Yes.
So the book went through 25 chapters with Goody as the, the perspective that we're seeing things from, 26, whatever it is. And then a couple chapters of New Goody, which is the old Eliza perspective. And then the final chapter is from the perspective of original Goody's son. And I think that this chapter I'm trying to reconcile what's going on in that chapter, because to me, before Goody went to become the new Eliza, she said to her son, "Don't be weak," right?
Mm-hmm.
And so she goes, and it seems like he kind of knows what's going on. He's got the bark. He can see, like, new Eliza is basically a ghost, is what I'm getting out of it. Like, she's not actually real and back in the real world or whatever. We could talk about that too, but like, he basically embarks on a quest, I think, to get his mom, right?
That's what it seemed like.
Which
now
breaks, first of all, it's the only male character that we see any perspective from. And second of all, that would break all of the cycles of the game altogether. So I feel like the final chapter was introducing like a hitch in an otherwise closed circuit of a game.
I guess I didn't think about it that way. I was wondering what would happen to him. Like, what other rules are there that we don't know?
Yeah, the game could account for this type of thing.
Yeah, I can't imagine that somebody else didn't go into the woods looking for their Goody at some point.
Yeah, well, it didn't seem like the husband of Eliza did, because he had a new lady, right? And he just kind of moved on.
Well, yeah. I mean, we don't know how long it's going to move on, but yeah, he did have a new lady that Eliza scared away. But now that's interesting that you say that, because I guess I didn't really give any thought. I accepted Eliza going back to her home, but yeah, what does it mean that the man and the boy that the man doesn't hear her? He does see her though, right?
No, Goody's husband doesn't see old Eliza.
I guess you're right. He just asked the kid, "What is it you're looking at through your weird fucking wooden binoculars or whatever?"
So the husband never sees old Eliza or the daughters at all, which is weird too.
Right, because the game, basically Captain Jane then comes to her and says, "Hey, come on back. It'd be so much fun. I'm Granny someone now, and you can be the new Captain Jane or whatever." So,
I mean, it could be more of a literal hell thing where, like, Goody taking over for Eliza basically allows Eliza to fully die or something like that, like to finally be moved along. I don't know. Captain Jane and Granny someone's characters being like haunting ghosts or something. I don't know.
So maybe the real release is what happens to Granny someone when someone gets tired enough of you in the game that they knock you off.
They just beat you to death or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That might be the only escape, because she's the only one we don't see. Captain Jane has moved into that role, which is arguably a shitty role, right, as we find out from what happened to Granny someone. Captain Jane is probably the good role in all of this.
Yeah, because you just kind of humping around trying to help people.
Mm-hmm. But then you find, yeah, oh, that's weird. Yeah, I don't know, man. Fuck. I think we've created more problems than we've solved doing this spoiler talk.
I don't know if I'd be satisfied. Like, I'm like, oh, we got to talk to Laird Hunt in my mind, and I'm like, do I want to? I don't know if I want to.
You know what? These are questions we couldn't ask him anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, we couldn't. We could privately. It's not something we could ask him to like. Yeah, like explain the very end of your rather complicated story to our listeners who haven't read your book.
Welcome to our Patreon exclusive interview with Laird Hunt.
Yeah, exactly.
Spoiler interviews.
Oh my God. So yeah, there are some really good things in this, man.
It was so, and it's not a long book. It's 200 something pages printed. So not a long book.
It's pretty fucking dense.
Very dense, and it carries, and I'll probably I'll reiterate this in a wrap up, but like it has the characteristics of like a perfume where because it's first person, being a story being told to us, very little dialogue, lots of descriptive long paragraphs, and so like even though there's not a lot of pages, there's so many more words on that page. So yeah, dense is real.
The density is real, even if very little else is. Thanks for listening to our spoiler talk for In the House, in the Dark of the Woods by Laird Hunt. I can tell you our next book review will probably not have spoiler talk. That's all I'm going to say at this point. But come back in a few weeks and check for more spoiler talk. Until then, thanks for being a valued patron.